Hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today on this first introductory session on the What Makes Me Me series of sessions. So, for those that don't know me, my name's Jeba, and I've been a psychology teacher for 14 years. I've worked within a high school and a college. Last year, we decided that we were going to home educate my daughter. So bringing my work online has allowed me to work a bit more flexibly, to be able to support her in her home ed journey. So thank you for joining me. I teach GCSE online, and I also teach and tuition A-level students. But I thought psychology is such a wonderful subject, and it's not usually something that young people would explore if you went to school until GCSE, which is obviously 14, 15. So I thought there's some elements of psychology that are accessible to younger children. So I thought I'd bring it to you. So here we are. So thank you so much. So let's get started. So what makes me me? Have a think of what that question brings to mind. Now it'll be different for different people. There's no right answer. So if you want to pause the video and have a little bit of time to think about this or explore it with the people at home, because this is a recorded session, I'm just going to continue to deliver the session and you can pause wherever you feel you need that extra time. So, some of you might have said your identity, who you identify with as a person, so who you are. You might have said personality. You might have said genetics, so things that we inherit from our parents might influence who we are. Things in the environment, so peers, parents, culture, society, social media, life experiences, anything that's happening outside of our biology can influence who we are. And really, all this influences our behavior. What behavioral traits do we have that make us who we are? Okay, so these are the things that we're going to be exploring over the next few sessions. We're going to start today by looking very briefly at identity, moving into personality. Not lots of psychological theory and key terms in today's session, as it's an introduction session, but I will touch upon some of the things we'll do in future sessions. I've planned around about 4 sessions at the moment, but in typical teacher style, I keep going and adding bits and changing bits. So I would imagine we're going to have maybe 5 or 6 sessions by the end of it. So let's move on. So what does the word identity actually mean? So it basically, in a nutshell, means who I am. So these are the qualities, the beliefs, the personality traits, the appearance and or expressions of who you are. So earlier on, last week maybe, I posted an activity on the Facebook page for people to create a collage that answers the question, what makes me me? Now, this is the one that I did. And these are all things that build up my identity. So you'll see I'm empathetic. I've got, I'm quite a caring person. I have different roles as well. I'm a mum, I'm a teacher, I'm a friend, I'm an auntie. So they influence my identity. I identify as a female. I have lots of different personality traits. As you can see there, I've written some of them outside. I'm quite honest. I'm a good friend. I'm a negotiator. I'm quite loyal. I am a thinker. Do I overthink? Maybe sometimes in certain situations. I can be quite stubborn. I am a people pleaser. Good communicator. Also, maybe your values might come into who you are as a person. So, what do you value the most in your life? So, some people value and have a goal of money. I don't particularly have that value. I obviously value money in the respect of I need money to have a roof over our heads, to provide food, and to be safe and secure. But money isn't the thing that makes me the most happy, if that makes sense. So I'm not striving to be a billionaire. Some people are, and that's absolutely fine. That's not a value of mine. Um, so it's just being reflective. Okay, so maybe you want to have a go at this activity. I'd love to see what you create. I chose to do mine on an online platform, but you could cut things out of newspapers, magazines, and you could create a collage physically. Please share pictures. I know a couple of you have already done that, and some tutors have got on board as well. And it's been really interesting to see how people create different visual representations of who they are. So my daughter did one as well. So if you want to go on the Facebook page and have a look at that, it's there for you all to see. So just a couple of questions for you to consider now. This session's really about you thinking about this big question rather than me teaching you things, if that makes sense. So where does our identity come from? And does our identity change? Or does it stay consistent over your lifetime? Does it stay the same? So give the video a pause, discuss it with people at home, or write your answer down. So psychologists are really interested in this idea of whether people choose their identities. So if we go back to what identity was, so it was personality, qualities, values, appearance, the expression of who they are. Do we choose that? Are we free and not influenced by anything else to choose our identity? Now, in psychology, there's a debate which is called the free will versus determinism debate. Now, some psychologists believe that all our behavior, not just identity, not just personality, but all our behavior is 100% our choice. We can choose our personality traits. We can choose how to behave in situations, free will. However, some psychologists completely disagree and say that free will is a complete illusion and that we believe we have a choice, but ultimately our behavior is influenced by genes, so internal factors. So this is called biological determinism, and it's also influenced by environmental factors like peers, parents, culture, society, social media, and that's called environmental determinism. There are psychologists who believe we're somewhere in the middle, and that's called soft determinism, that we are influenced by our genes, we are influenced by our environment, but we do have an element of choice. Now it's quite a big debate within psychology, and some of the topics that we might cover in the future will look at that in a little bit more detail. But we're looking at identity. Is our identity free to choose? Or is it influenced by these other factors? Again, just something for you to consider. We will look at theories at a later stage that looks at this particular question. So some believe that we internalize our identity based on our values of our parents, peers, and other role models. So we internalize those values. So we take them on board from a very early age, and we don't even realize it's not conscious, it's not a conscious decision. We just, by the way that we're brought up, that becomes our own internalized value or belief, which later then influences our identity. Now, some people might recognize some of these internal values, beliefs, and ideas and then alter them due to experience. Um, and this is this debate, isn't it? Are we born with our identity, or is it something that we acquire throughout our life? Now, this is something that researchers kind of agree on, that identity is never final. We never are a fully complete project. We continue to develop through our life. We are an ongoing project as we learn and we develop and we experience new things. So that's something I think is really important to recognize, that there's always growth, and that we can develop our identity and change our identity if we feel we need to, so that it aligns more with who we are, so that we live in our true self. Psychologists often talk about this idea of true self. So there's psychologists called Maslow and Rogers who believe that the ultimate goal in life is to reach something called self-actualization, where we are living our full potential. And one of the key aspects, according to them, to live our full potential is to have high self-esteem, to have confidence, and to feel safe and secure in who we are as a person. And sometimes it takes a lifetime for people to be able to fully be at home with who they are. And some people never get there. So, according to Maslow and Rogers, some people never fully self-actualize, but that is the goal of humanity, of humans. So, again, we can look at that in more detail at a later stage. So it's believed that knowing one's identity accurately can increase self-esteem and confidence and can reduce low mood, sadness, and anxiety. So this idea of being self-reflective and self-aware is really important in order for us to raise our self-confidence, esteem, and happiness. So we're going to look at personality specifically now. We're going to do an introduction to what personality is. So, personality is a characteristic set of behaviors. So, what we do, cognitions, how we think, and emotions, how we feel. These patterns are formed, we've talked about this previously, from biological, so our genes, what we get from our parents, and environmental factors, all those things that I said before. So we're going to do a quick activity now. Researchers looked at this idea that your signature can reveal something about your personality. So if you want to, we're going to give it a go. And I'm going to I'm going to tell you some of the interpretation um, characteristics that you can have a look at your signature and see whether you think this theory applies to you. Okay, so I'd like you to write a sentence about yourself on a piece of paper, or if you've printed off the worksheet that I've provided, just write your sentence on there. So it can be anything about yourself, it doesn't have to be long. A simple sentence like, my name is Gemma and my favorite hobby is dancing. Okay, can be anything. Underneath that, I'd just like you to sign your name. Okay, I don't want to say any more, so pause the video, give it a go. Okay, so we're going to look at now um, interpreting your signature. Okay, and as we're doing that, I want you to just be really reflective and critically evaluate, does this theory apply to you? Okay, so this isn't me telling you your personality. You know your personality best. Okay, so I want you to see, does this theory match with what you think your personality is? So, if your first name is more prominent, meaning more visible or more a feature of your signature than your surname, then this suggests that you have positive feelings about your childhood and your private self is more important than your public self. So, your private self is who you are inside, so in your thoughts and in your heart. And your public self is who you show to other people. Now, when I talked before about Rogers and Maslow, excuse me, they suggest that some people's private self and public self are the same, but some people have a private self that's different to their public self. And I think we can all relate to that. In certain situations, you might display certain characteristics of yourself and certain personality traits or certain identities in comparison to when you're with other people. My identity as a mum is very different to my identity as a friend. Okay. So obviously there'll be similarities. I'm still the same person. But my public self towards my children and my public self towards my friend might be slightly different. Which one of them aligns with my true self? Probably a bit of both. Okay. So if your surname is more prominent, then your public self is more important to you. So have a think of that. Now, how well you can read the name is also something that's meant to reflect personality type, traits. So if you can read your name really well and it's clear, apparently you have clear ideas and objectives. And Bill Gates' signature has said to be quite readable. And that does align with his personality, clear ideas, objectives. He's been very successful. Maybe that is part of his personality. If your name is not very readable, so if it's a little bit of a squiggle, then this suggests that you're less assertive and you tend to avoid conflict. So, this idea that you're not really good at voicing your opinions and getting other people to listen to your ideas and opinions, and maybe you don't like arguments, you stay away from those type of situations. Now, if your name is incomplete, meaning if it's just initials or it's a nickname or you've not got your surname, then you're quite an independent person and or private. And the man who created Facebook, this is his signature, and apparently that illustrates his personality. So again, be reflective. Does this align with your personality and your signature? Okay, the angle. If your signature, when you've written it, if it stays on the line, we'll talk about that later, but this is if it goes in an upwards direction. So if it's slanted a little bit upwards, then you're optimistic. So you see the positive side of things, you're in control and you're ambitious. You like to set goals and you've got high expectations on those goals. If it's descending, so if it's going down, if it's slanting down, then you have a tendency to be pessimistic, which means negative. You tend to look at the negative side of situations, maybe give up easily facing problems and lack self-confidence. Now, like I say, this doesn't mean this is factual. This is just a little bit of the theory. My husband did his signature and his slanted down, and that does not align with his personality at all. Okay, so this isn't cause and effect. This isn't concrete, this is a theory that works. Absolutely not. You're being reflective on this. And then horizontal. So if it does stay on that straight line, you're emotionally stable, well balanced, and organized, according to the theory. Okay, the size of the signature matters apparently. If you've got a bigger signature, you're more confident. If your signature is smaller than the sentence that I asked you to write, then this means you lack confidence and you're not very secure in who you are, apparently. Okay, do you agree or disagree and why? Critically evaluate. Have a think about that. Again, some more questions for you to think about. Why do we need to know personality? Why are psychologists interested in personality? So research suggests, oh, I'll come back to that in a moment. So research suggests we need to know about personality in order to help us feel happier, make better choices, to have more successful relationships. Because if we can recognize personality traits that might be in conflict with our partner or with our friends and family, then it's that idea of making choices and amendments maybe to be able to have that successful relationship. If we know personality traits, then it's suggested we can predict behavior. So psychologists look at lots of different types of behavior. One of the things that a lot of psychologists are interested in is mental health, and looking at the link between personality and mental health. Are some personality types more prone to things like depression and anxiety? And how can we improve mental health based on those personality traits? Because when you look at different treatments for things like depression and anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, then certain treatments might be better for certain personality types. So, in order for us to understand our personality, it helps us to choose treatments that are going to be helpful for us if we are struggling with our mental health. Okay. Criminal behaviour is a big interest with a lot of young people, especially when I was doing A-level psychology. Some students would choose to study A-level psychology just because they were interested in understanding why people commit crime. Um, and there is a theory by Eysenck who suggests that certain personality types are more prone to criminal behaviour. I'm going to add this into one of my sessions later on in the series. He suggests that we inherit our nervous system from our parents, and there are different types of nervous systems, some that are overstimulated, some that are understimulated, and so certain criminal behavior might be a product of an under aroused nervous system. So people who seek a thrill might be because their nervous system isn't working effectively. So they are seeking that thrill. Um, so yeah, I'll put that on my later lessons. So we've just talked about that. If we can learn and understand our personality, our feelings, and our thoughts, then we can increase our self-awareness. And our self-awareness leads to better choices, improved relationships, and more life satisfaction. So, if you was live, there would be a little quiz now for you to have a go at. But as you're not live, I'm not sure how this is going to work. So hopefully you'll be able to see this on the screen and you can just have a look at it and think about it yourself at home. So let's have a look at these different personality traits here. We've got patient, honest, spoilt, kind, ambitious, stubborn, self-confident, competitive, and shy. And the idea is that we're just going to think about, are these personality traits positive, which means they're good, they're desirable, that we would traits that we would want to have. Negative, maybe these personality traits may not be desirable, meaning that maybe they might lead to poor choices, poor behavior that isn't acceptable in society, or behavior that you might not want to display. And neutral, meaning it could be either positive or negative. So I'll just read them out again and you can have a think. Patient, honest, spoilt, kind, ambitious, stubborn, self-confident, competitive, and shy. Okay, so just have a think. There's no right or wrong answer. I'll go through with what I believe. Um, Patient, I would say, is positive, honest, positive. Spoil, I originally said negative for this one, but some people on the live went for neutral. I suppose it depends how that influences your behavior towards other people. Um, Kind, positive, ambitious, I would say both. Ambitious is a good thing to strive for goals. However, you might be able to think of situations where ambition could result in maybe a negative consequence. If people are too ambitious, maybe it starts to affect stress, maybe. Um, Stubborn. I'm quite stubborn and I have been more stubborn as a child than I am as an adult. I've kind of learned that it's not always gone in my favor to be stubborn. Um, Stubborn can, I think, be more negative than positive, but some argued in the live session that stubborn can also be a positive thing because it allows you to maybe get your voice heard, maybe? Or is that a different quality? Maybe that's a different quality. Self-confident can be both. If you are self-confident, that's a good thing because you're going to feel good about yourself. But can you be overly self-confident? And can that come across as maybe being cocky, maybe? I suppose if you're being outwardly self-confident and it's affecting other people's confidence levels, possibly, who knows? Competitive, I would say both. Depends how you use that competitive nature. And shy. Shy, I think shy, a lot of people might consider it as negative. Um, but I think you can use that towards your advantage to recognize if you're a shy person, then that just means that you might not feel comfortable in big social situations and you're more comfortable on your own or with a one-to-one friendship. And if you can recognize that personality trait, then you can make choices that are in line with that, rather than feeling bad and feeling unhappy with that personality trait. Sit with it and use it towards your use it to your advantage. Okay, so hopefully you could see that. So I'm just going to come out of that and hopefully you can see my screen, my slides. So we're going to move on now to think about why it's important to recognize your negative traits. Negative traits isn't about self-judgment. I do not want you to start judging yourself if you are stubborn, like myself. It's about self-awareness. You can use this self-awareness as your superpower because then you can use them to your advantage in certain situations, or you might be able to work on improving that trait. Okay, remember, everybody has negative traits. Everybody, nobody's perfect. And some of these might be considered negative traits in certain situations are positive. Um, so it's all about being self-aware and also each combination of personality traits for each different person is going to be different. So we're all unique, we're all special, and it's just being self-aware. And how can we use our personality to our advantage to ensure that in a situation we are happy, we are living a satisfied life, and it's not affecting us in a negative way. Okay, so on your sheet or on the screen, there's lots of personality traits. This is just a selection of all the ones that have been identified. Circle the ones that apply to you. I have been considered sarcastic. Definitely trying to reduce my sarcasm, although I've definitely passed it on to my children, because they're quite sarcastic as well. It's meant to be the lowest form of wit, meaning it's not a good trait to have, and some would suggest that it shows a lack of intelligence. Um, I was on my teacher training on my very first day, and my teacher, the teacher who was teaching us how to be a teacher, said, if you're sarcastic, you need to stop it right now. Sarcasm in a classroom has no place. So I had to work very hard to recognize when I was being sarcastic or when I was going to say a sarcastic remark and try to stop myself and recognize as well how sarcasm isn't always funny to other people. I'd never considered that before. Um, it can come across as quite rude, actually. And when I recognized that, I was like, oh yeah, that's not nice. I don't like it. So just being reflective on that. Like I say, I'm quite stubborn in certain situations. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not. Independent, generous, reliable, loyal, and realistic. Okay? So I'm not saying some of those other things don't apply to me as well. They do, but that's just a handful. Once you've done that, reflect on them and think about how can you now use that trait to be aware of, well, two things. First of all, how does that trait affect you as a person? How does it influence your behavior? Does it lead to good choices? How can you use this now self-awareness to make better choices in situations? Or what could you do to improve that particular aspect of your personality? Just be reflective. Just have a think. Okay, so a little bit of the theory now, but not in lots of detail. So where does some of these personality trait theories come from? Well, it started with a psychologist called Allport. That's his surname. That's one thing with psychology is you just use the surname. Allport's trait theory considered around about 7,000 different personality traits. He basically looked in a dictionary and identified all these personality traits. And he suggested that these traits are basically on a continuum, which means some people may have a lot of a trait and some people might have just a little bit. And every person has a unique combination of these different personality traits, a bit like a cake recipe. You throw all these different personality traits in to create your personality profile. And he suggests that these personality traits are innate within us. So some of the, well, most of them we're born with. We're born with these personality traits. However, they are then shaped by things in the environment. So some of these personality traits will develop and get stronger, and some will get weaker depending on the environment. Then Cattell came along and looked at all these personality traits and then reduced them down to around about 16. And then later on, other psychologists got involved and created a more scientific way of studying personality and created a psychometric test, which is basically like a questionnaire with statements. And you say whether you agree or disagree with those statements that categorizes you into these five personality types. It's called the Big Five or the five factor model. So you've got conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, and openness. And these five personality types are on a continuum. So you can either be at the lower end or the higher end of these personality traits. Now, these are basically five big categories of personality that involve all the other personality traits. So, for example, if you look at agreeableness, it's got lots of mini personality traits in there. So helpfulness, trusting, friendly, generous. So what psychologists have done is they've looked at Allport's 7,000 personality traits and narrowed it down into these five categories. Okay. So online there are tests that you can do. Now it does say it's a free resource, this one. However, I've not managed to do it yet. So I can't 100% say that it's free. But if you type in the Big Five personality test, it should come up. It should take about 10 minutes, this one, I think it says, and there's quite a lot of different questions. And all you do is you say whether you agree or disagree with that statement about yourself. And then it will tell you where you lie in these different categories of personality. Now, it's really important that when we look at questionnaires, we critically evaluate them. Just because it's psychological and research doesn't mean it's factual, okay? Because it depends how we answer the questions in the questionnaire and whether you agree or very, I can't remember what the phrasing is now, agree a lot or agree a little bit. That's very subjective, which means it's a personal opinion, whether it's a lot or a little. And you might answer the questionnaire today, and then another day when you're feeling a little bit different, you might answer the question again. And does it mean you're going to get the same result? That's something psychologists would look at. They would look at doing a test multiple times to see if they get the same results, to see if they're consistent, and that would be reliable data. So in order for it to be reliable, we'd have to do it a few times. But the most important thing, if you're going to give it a go, is to be reflective. Do you agree or disagree with this? You know your personality more than anybody. There are some fun quizzes you can do. National Geographic Kids. You can discover what cute animal you're most likely to be, a Greek god, what emoji you're most likely to be. It's just for fun. And if your result doesn't fit your personality, again, it is just for fun. You know your personality more than anybody. Okay, and to finish off on the sheet, if you printed it off, there's a little activity for you to bring everything together and just to get you thinking a bit more about personality before next session. It's like a game of noughts and crosses or tic-tac-toe, however you call it, whatever you call it. The idea is that you work with somebody, you're against somebody at home, you take it in turns to answer a question for 2 minutes. If you manage it for 2 minutes, you get to put your cross or your circle, and then if you get three in a row, you win. Somebody did notice in my last class that I've written what is your personality, your best personality trait twice. And me and my daughter tried this, and 2 minutes seemed too long, so we did it for a minute. So you can decide how long you want to talk for. So, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that's just been a good introduction into this series of sessions. If you've got any questions, please feel free to email me or pop it on the Facebook chat. We will be going through more psychological research and theories and studies as we go through the sessions. Thank you.